Horizon Chess, Home Studio X, and this is The Rise of War in 2024 by channel Task and Purpose. Yes, another Task and Purpose video, and I guess it's gonna become a tradition now. He made a video in last year about Rise of War in 2023. That's how fucked up world we live in. Then now this is gonna be a series. And I think this is a longer video than the... Wait a minute, was that... I don't know if it's longer or not. I think it was like an hour long, right? I don't know. But yeah, as you can see from the graph, yeah, it's war somehow is going up this year. Like, how is that even possible? Like, what wars? Are you talking about like smaller countries, smaller skirmishes here and there? Is that count as war? Because I don't think I remember any major war happening this year that wasn't already happening last year, right? Middle Eastern thing was still happening last year, so I don't know. But that graph is fucked up. 2020, 2021, then... Yeah, but if you see like a graph, like look at that, it's like in a way slow rise. It's not like nothing is suddenly exploding. But I'm guessing like the major wars of like Ukraine Russia thing and like Israel Gaza thing, that kind of counts as like bigger, even though numerically it's just like another war. I don't know. This is gonna be interesting. It's a 46-minute video, so he's gonna go deep with the statistics and things. Task and Purpose is a great channel, especially when it comes to statistic and like geopolitics and wars and all this stuff, right? I'm pretty sure he went to Ukraine in his recent videos. Like, okay, that takes some balls. But then again, he's a military guy, right? He's a soldier, so yeah, he's been through this, I guess. So let's watch this one.
Wars have doubled over the past 5 years. This pattern from 2023 has continued, with casualties reaching over 200,000 this year, which is levels that we haven't seen since the Cold War. I've consolidated all the information you need to know about the conflicts and wars happening around the world in 2024. This disturbing trend shows that there are an estimated 56 separate conflicts raging, involving 92 different countries. That's the most since World War II. But the new trend that I would like to focus on and bring to your attention throughout this video is the fact that these small wars are increasingly becoming interconnected, I think, meaning the events...
Alright, there was a dot between Pakistan and India at Jammu Kashmir, obviously. Does that count as war? Because this is just terror attacks on the Indian military and things like that. There's no direct like war. So what counts as war? Like terror attacks and things like that. Does that count as war as well? I don't know.
In one sector are now influencing the outcome of distant wars elsewhere in ways that were formerly considered taboo or off limits. While this might seem doom and gloom, I'll also cover areas where we might have reason to be optimistic about the chances of peace in 2025. The first conflict we're going to look at was a little bit overshadowed this year, but its outcome is extremely important. It's the civil war in Myanmar, and it's been raging right on China's doorstep, and major developments occurred here in 2024. So the Southeast Asian country of Myanmar has been fighting ever since a military coup in February 2021. And if you're like me, you're probably wondering, who are we supposed to root for here? One of the ways this war has been framed is democratic rebel forces versus autocratic junta military forces. And we'll see, this hasn't been a great year for autocracies. Ethnic minority insurgents have fought in the hilly terrains of Myanmar's rural areas. The scattered insurgent groups in the countryside hated each other though, almost as much as they hated the government in the cities, so that made it difficult for them to form a united front that they could take on against the military. So the rebels got their first break when three insurgent groups, these three factions in the north of the country, set aside...
I said in one of the recent video, I think it was about Syria. The fucked up thing about all this is like, if you're not stable and strong at a certain threshold, if you're below that threshold, having a stable democracy feels like such a hard thing, right? Like such a distant dream or something. Because even if like some good guy, let's say good militia, who cares for the people, somehow wins, the leader's gonna have some idea, someone in the chain of command is gonna have idea, like they'll like the power or something. Like it's like replacing one thing with another. It always goes like that. This is the problem with like a military power, right? If military is the in Pakistan, like the military is the power, right? Even though it's a democracy, right? It's said like military generals have the last say. Like that never ends well, and we've seen like how that causes problem with Pakistan. And Pakistan's big enough compared to what I'm saying right now, right? Pakistan is big compared to like smaller, like some place who barely holding anything together. Pakistan doesn't count in that one, and still this is the issue, right? So smaller thing like some like Syrian thing, like Syrian dictatorship has been overthrown. Is new things going to be better? Like, does it have ties to certain organization? Like, what's going to happen? Who knows? Like, fingers crossed. This is always the case.
Aside their differences and work together in Operation 1027, as it was called. I think it was Henry Rawlings who said, "Nothing brings people together more than mutual hatred." It seems like the rebels took a page straight out of the playbook from Syria, as we'll get into later. Now, naming themselves the Three Brotherhood Alliance, the rebels coordinated their movements and they exploited the jungle terrain to surround and isolate military bases.
Back up. Is that a Ford pickup truck? How they got that? Look at those tires. They're pimping their ride. Like, damn. I'm pretty sure that's Ford, right? Looks Ford.
The jungle terrain.
Wait a minute. Is it Chevy? Is it Ford? I'm confused now. Doesn't look like Toyota, but then again, I'm not keeping up with like latest trends of how vehicles look. But this is either Ford. It looks like F-150. I don't know why. So I guess American pickup trucks are becoming so sturdy that people are switching, like militias are switching from Toyotas to that apparently.
To surround and isolate military bases deep in the rural north. The plan worked. The Three Brotherhood Alliance captured over 220 junta positions by the end of November, and the rebels claim to have captured almost 1,000 junta soldiers along with their weapons and equipment. But to me, one of the most fascinating things to come out of the Myanmar war is the fact that they still use war elephants as logistics and transportation. The success of Operation 1027 inspired other...
I mean, I want to say like, I want to say all that, but then again, geography does come in the way. Remember playing Far Cry 4? If you haven't, like, it's in mountainous area. Like, that changes things. Now, that's supposed to be in Himalayas or something. I'm not saying Myanmar is at that place, but Myanmar is very mountainous. I've seen Top Gear episode of that. How there was like I think like militias has been going on since then, because that episode was like 10-12 years ago, maybe more, and that was a case even then. Like they were having dinner with militias and things, and it's like really mountainous, like climbing and thing, and elephants are good at that, so maybe.
Rebel groups across the country to launch their own uprisings, carving out their own sectors of control throughout the country and blockading major highways, the ones that connect Myanmar to neighboring China and Vietnam. The instability and disruption in trade prompted China to step in and mediate a tense ceasefire in January of 2024, yet the agreement fell through. The civil war then intensified into a constant broil of raids and ambushes. In 2024, these have gradually pushed the junta forces back into the center of the country, while the rebels controlled a wide horseshoe to the west, north, and east. However, the rebels can't stand up to the direct air and artillery bombardment that they face, so they've adopted some unique tactics over the past year that might seem familiar to regular viewers. They have a drone factory that assembles militarized UAVs to attack the government forces with. Meanwhile, the junta's army has resorted...
There was a saying that, oh, you Second Amendment, you like your Second Amendment, how are you going to fight government? Government has drone. I guess they were talking about predator drones, military drones, obviously. But now, that shit is kind of, not flipped, but like kind of like equalized. Oh, by the way, anyone can get small drones and put bombs in them. There you go. Even the guerrilla warfare and militias can get drones and like fuck up a heavy military if they know the terrain, if they know how to do it, basically, right? So yeah, there you go. Like, oh, by the way, they can't fight against this equipment. Yeah, we have small Amazon drones now. There you go. That's insane. This is why laser technology is like amping up. Once it becomes like a default thing for our military, right? Like, yeah, this drone problem is not going to be there, but until then, this, like, even the small drones are a threat.
to activating an old and unpopular conscription law to replace the 30,000 losses that they've suffered since the beginning of the rebellion. So yes, the draft has boosted the army's numbers back up, but the new recruits are reportedly poorly trained, equipped, and motivated. Not all conscripts are created equal. More than 14,000 junta troops have defected because of this. On the other hand, there is some bad news for the pro-democracy forces. The ruling junta also has the support of Russia and China, which both sold them artillery, jets, and helicopters to the Myanmar junta. So this conflict has threatened to impact India as well, because they share a long border with Myanmar, so they face increased insurgency risk from the northeastern states due to the spillover of weapons and militants. And that's one of the worst aspects, I think, of the conflict, is the increased arms trafficking.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I think Russia and India's relations might slowly start to get like lessen or like even, like sour. Because there's many things that is like causing issues, not to mention Ukraine, Russia, I think it's already causing pressure on India. Now shit like this, where like Russia and China and India is not in like that good terms, so that doesn't matter. But Russia providing arms and equipment to Myanmar that could leak into India, causing stability problem. India might not be happy about that.
That has led to a surge in illegal weapons flowing across Southeast Asia. A major milestone in their resistance campaign was reached, though, in December 2024, when the rebels made the junta forces fall back. This was their last stronghold in the western province of Rakhine. What that means is that the resistance groups now control the entire border from west to east. One rebel fighter said, quote, "They had dug deep ditches filled with spikes around the base. There were bunkers and reinforced buildings. They laid more than 1,000 mines. Many of our fighters lost limbs or their lives trying to get through." As the civil war approaches its fourth year, there are now signs that China might be weighing in a more direct intervention possibly. On November 20th, Beijing proposed a joint security company with the military junta of Myanmar to protect China's investments in the country, because it's part of the Belt and Road.
Yeah, this will cause problems between India and China, that's for damn sure. Knowledge of geopolitics tells me the border between Myanmar and India is a problem. Not to mention India protecting that particular border for India is in itself is a problem. East part of India is really hard to accessible area, right? I suspect China has already been kind of meddling with there, because there was like recent issues inside the country there, right? So this is my theory. I don't know anything. Nobody knows anything. But like knowing all the Cold War espionage and shit, China must be meddling with like East Indian territories, right, close to Myanmar border. And now they might enter Myanmar. India might enter as well if that happens, because India shares the border between Myanmar, right? There's already an issue with the regions, Arunachal Pradesh and things. India doesn't want China to get a foothold where now they have to think about another border against China.
Initiative. An $800 million nickel mine owned by China was briefly occupied by the rebels in 2022, and the instability in the country threatens other Chinese economic and political interests in Myanmar. So Myanmar's laws actually outlaw the presence of any foreign troops of this kind on their territory, but the junta may be aiming to ignore that law or use a joint security company with China as a kind of loophole to get through it. Technically legal intervention is the best intervention. As of mid-December, the military junta is still reviewing China's proposal, and the tide of the civil war could radically shift away from the resistance if Chinese troops join the fight. To give you an idea of how this global trend of warfare is increasing, this report from the International Institute for Strategic Studies found that the combat deaths worldwide rose from more than 37% compared to 2023. According to the ACLED, 1 in 7 people in the world today are now exposed to conflict. So next we'll travel to the Western Hemisphere in Mexico. Mexico's ongoing cartel violence remains one of the world's most brutal.
Okay, cartel videos from Task and Purpose is really unique, because usually I don't see that in like war channels, because they just focus on like country war. They don't usually like drug war. They don't cover that. and that's surprising thing to me because it's like a big issue and like not many channel covers this, and I like Tasking Paper covering it, especially knowing like how Trump and the border thing is big, how it's polarized between people in America, like is this good or not, keeping border, securing border, shit like that. So having knowledge of how things are, like spooling up, how drug war is happening, knowledge of that is important. And I'm surprised not many people are covering it. So I like Tasking Paper covers like what is happening, because I didn't know much about this before I watched few Tasking Papers video, like how the drug war is like amplifying, right? This is interesting.
Over 30,000 crime-related deaths reported each year. According to the Council on Foreign Relations Global Conflict Tracker, Mexico's 2024 elections were the most violent in decades, which saw journalists and high-ranking politicians attacked at record levels. The problem here is that these organizations are spreading into the United States across the border, creating a crisis. This is a particular important issue for the US.
You know what I don't get? Again, I'm pausing, but you know what I don't get? How can America not protect its border? I understand it's big border, but how can this drug organization can just walk inside America like that, right? Because India is, like I said, like Indian border is like border for terrorism. All the terrorist organization you can find all the way to Pakistan cannot cross Indian border. They've been trying that for like 15 or so years. They can't. Because even India, right? India is not the biggest country in the world. We are in top 5, but not the biggest in the world. But we can protect our border. We can make sure like no terrorist cell becomes permanent in India. Because Indian military is big. Indian government is more than stable enough, right? Even though it's like a big population, India can govern fine enough. So like terrorist cell, even if they start to make a foothold, Indian government will get a whiff of it. Anti-terror squad will like swarm them like flies, basically. So they've been trying to do that. They can't. How is USA, who has like 10 times higher GDP than India, not to mention insane defense budget, can't protect its own border and can't stop like this organization crossing through? I don't get that.
Because Mexico is one of their greatest allies and partners, especially when it comes to trade. The major development here this year is that Mexico has increasingly militarized control of its airports and infrastructure, and even federalized their National Guard in an effort to combat the cartel. So as of 2024, the Mexican military now oversees 30% of all airports in Mexico, including both Mexico City airports. The more power you give the military in policing civilians, the more concern there is for human rights violations. So Mexico is a beautiful country with some of the best food I think about on the planet. The idea that it's an open war zone 24/7 is an exaggeration right now, and I'm not looking to sensationalize things. However, if you look close enough at any nation really, there's a criminal element festering in the background, especially in Mexico, where there's a cartel war raging in 2024 between factions of the most powerful and largest Sinaloa cartel. Basically, the cartel went to war with itself after the US arrested their leader, who claimed that he was betrayed by another cartel member. It's a plot worthy of a Mexican soap opera or telenovela. Actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was lifted straight from the sequel to Sicario. So this fragmentation of power has created more decentralized gangs in Mexico that are willing to become hyper-violent in order to stand out and secure their spot. Increasingly, we're seeing these cartels become less like gangs and more like militaries, using drone warfare and high-powered weaponry. Many of these weapons...
Yeah, they haven't been gang-like in a long time because of money. If you have money, you can become advanced pretty fast, because all you have to do is like borrow from somebody else or find an expert who can modernize your thing and your security, right? So they've always been somewhat modern. Like they always have like the decent, good enough weapons, which is like a surprise, and like a network and like spy level people who can just like monitor. That's the reason you can't just like, you can go after, you can do all the drug war you want, but you won't be able to like stop them. This is the reason. Because they even have smart people there, like, taken from like some military background and things. It doesn't surprise me they can get better equipment and like, drones and things. I mean, of course they can.
Have been smuggled in from the United States. So there's this revolving door of weapons from the US going to Mexico and drugs from Mexico going to the United States, supply and demand at its absolute worst. Don't get me wrong though, there is some welcome developments here because fentanyl deaths in the United States are down by 14% in 2024, which is still way too high at 97,000 people, but at least it's some hope for a trend reversal. Illegal immigration into the United States from Latin American countries has also dropped by 98%, which has eased tensions at the southern border. But eased tensions don't mean no tensions. In 2024, we saw renewed talk of the United States possibly sending special forces operators to kill cartel leadership. So far as I can tell though, these ideas have only been hinted at or suggested as possibilities. There isn't any actual plan set in motion for a real-life Operation Ghost Recon Wildlands as of yet. So from here, we'll jump over the border to the United States of America, where there is no cartel war, but there has been an unusual amount of political violence this year. One of the things you guys always tell me in the comments section is that you appreciate how I try my best to stay unbiased with my reporting. And one of the ways I'm able to do that is thanks to my team's subscription to Ground News. Ground News is a website and an app.
What political wise? Isn't that just like Trump thing, like 2 attacks? Like, is there more? Like other politicians are getting attacked as well? Like, I don't know this. Yeah, well, go to ground.news for us task and support this channel, or with a QR code or like original video page link.
You give Ground News a shot by clicking the link in the description or the pinned comment below. In 2024, there was not one, but 2 political assassination attempts on Donald Trump. A shooter named Crooks at a Pennsylvania rally fired shots that killed a bystander and hit Trump in the ear. Crooks was killed by a Secret Service counter-sniper team, but regardless of your political beliefs, there was widespread bipartisan outrage in the United States that security was so lax and the shooter was able to get shots off.
I mean, why do we have to say that? Why do, oh, by the way, there was bipartisan outrage. There should be. Is this the world we live in? Like, that's a good thing now? Because you expect not to have that? Like, doesn't, you can squabble over politics all you want, but there's like, violence is never the case. Like, we live in democracy. Are you kidding me? This is like the top country in the world, $40 trillion economy. Like, yeah, this the bottom safety layer you should at least have. Where shit like this happens, doesn't matter if you like the candidate or not, you have to condemn it. Like, don't do this shit. I mean, come on. Even then, there are like morons in the online, like just saying wrong things. Like, you can hate Trump all you want, right? But this is not good, right? This is never the answer. Are you kidding me? And majority of you, like, he won a major vote. I mean, come on.
Off and even fly a drone over the event beforehand. A second assassination attempt then occurred in Florida, when a man named Ryan Routh tried to fire shots with an SKS from about 300 meters away at a golf course. The Secret Service fired first, they prevented the attack, but the reason Routh may have done this was because he might have believed that if Trump was elected, he would no longer send aid to Ukraine, and Routh was exchanging messages with British-trained commandos from Afghanistan a few days prior. So these are Afghanistan commandos that were trained by the British. He was trying to recruit them to fight for Ukraine against Russia using the instant messaging app WhatsApp. So Routh said that he went to Ukraine to join the fight, but he was obsessed to not be an ideal candidate for the battle.
Okay, seriously, how many of you gone like, WhatsApp, what is that? Be honest. How many of you iOS people, this people basically, how many of you just went like, oh, what is WhatsApp? Like, I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, anybody who just uses Android probably know WhatsApp, but like you iOS people just like live in your own mind. Right? I don't know. I can't get used to iOS, right? I just like, that's why I bought Android. Like, I can't, right? I switched to iOS, then I'm like, something's not right, and I went back to Android.
Because he was in his mid-50s and had no military experience. He then tried to run unauthorized recruiting campaigns to bring in foreign fighters for Ukraine's military. A volunteer from Ukraine's International Legion said that Routh was a delusional liar, that he was not and has never been associated with the International Legion or the Ukrainian Armed Forces at all. He said Routh was combative, that he was argumentative, and that he refused repeatedly to understand basic army policy, and that he had these delusions of grandeur and was very disconnected from reality. So I met with the International Legion when I was reporting from inside Ukraine, and I learned that they deal with their fair share of crazies and nuts who want to get involved in the war, but are not mentally fit. So Evelyn, from the
People who watch Jason Statham movies and things, they're like, I can make a difference. They're people, I'm guessing.
Foreign International Brigade in Ukraine said that Ruth had never been part of or associated or linked with in any capacity. But I wanted to touch on this because I think it shows the ways in which wars are spilling over and causing instability in ways that we might not think of. To better understand what I mean, let's travel to Ukraine itself, something that I did in 2024 to gain a better understanding of the conflict. I saw from the ground how the war has unfortunately become further inflamed in 2024. Russians and Ukrainians recognized a grim milestone on November 19th of 1,000 days at war with each other. The big development this year here is that Ukraine launched a tiny invasion into internationally recognized Russian territory for the first time in Kursk. In response, Russia worked with North Koreans to deploy 11,000 of their troops who are now fighting directly on Russia's behalf. This is according to the Ukrainian military, who recently released drone footage claiming to actually show the casualties of the North Koreans. What's been happening is crazy, so I need to catch you up on all of it. In December 2024, this drone footage showed what claimed to be an assault from North Koreans. The supposed North Korean troops charged headlong into Ukrainian positions. They were blasted by artillery and Mark 19 automatic grenade launchers, two weapon systems that go together like peanut butter and explosive jelly. Ukraine claims 3,000 North Koreans have been killed so far. They also said they captured at least one, who later died of his wounds. The US and Ukrainian intelligence agencies say that these North Koreans have been killing themselves on the battlefield instead of being captured.
Okay, let's talk about this. Seriously, let's talk about this. You live in North Korea, right? Who knows what your condition is there? Like, are you treated well because you're military, or you just like you have a shitty life? Who the fuck knows? Then maybe you hope to have a better life in the future. Then you go to some other country that you have nothing to do about, right? Like, it's not your country, right? And try to fight some country behalf of some other country which is not your country, and then you die. How fucked up is that, right? That is your life. Imagine that, like, you get born, the fucked up life, then you go to some foreign country that you have nothing to do about, and there where you die. This is grim, man. This is fucking grim, right? I don't know.
Alive. They recovered a diary from one of the fallen North Korean soldiers named Private Hong Jong. Now, his diary is actually fascinating, so I'm going to read some of it to you right now. Quote, when detecting a drone, you need to create a trio of 3 people, while the one who lures the drone keeps a distance 7 meters, and those who shoot 10-12 meters behind him. He then said, if the one who's luring stands still, the drone will stop its movement. At this moment, the one who's shooting will eliminate the drone. To get away from incoming artillery, he then recommended hiding in the same place of a previous round that hit, the age-old lightning never strikes the same place twice wisdom. Okay, so some of the diary then got deeply personal, and I know people are cynical and they make fun of North Koreans dying.
Hold up there. Is that true? Artillery doesn't strike same place twice. Lightning is different, but like, isn't there a possibility artillery might strike the same place if like somehow artillery like even after striking, even after recall sets back somehow? I don't know.
Dying in Kursk, but personally I think it's amazing for us to get a direct view into the mind of your average North Korean infantryman. He says, quote, I grew up in the bosom of a blessed party, studied to my heart's content without worrying about anything in this world. I will unconditionally carry out the orders of the Supreme Commander Kim Jong-un, even if it costs me my life. I will show the whole world the invincible courage and sacrifice of Kim Jong-un's Red Special Forces, end quote. This information hasn't been independently verified yet, but the best evidence I could find so far is reports of North Korean authorities.
Yeah, that is also one of the things I think about. Like, I just said, like, you have a fucked up life, but do you? Like, we assume, like, North Korean standards are not same as the other democratic world standards. People don't have all the freedom. But if you were born in that, if you just have this propaganda with you, like, okay, so there is nothing, Supreme Commander is the best, there is no other country is great, you live in the greatest country in the world, you're probably gonna believe that. Like, you're brainwashed. So maybe you're not living shitty life because whatever you live in, you like it, and that is all you know. That is one thing you can take from that, I guess, because this is a diary, right? This is not some official report. He doesn't have to lie here.
Authorities handing out war certificates and benefits to the families of the soldiers who have been killed fighting for Russia. However, instead of the thousands dead claimed by Ukraine, these reports indicate it's actually dozens of families getting these benefits in North Korea. And the jury is still out on how effective these troops will end up being and whether or not reinforcements will be sent by the supreme leader Kim Jong-un himself, but I think this is an insane development. Since then, Russia has reportedly regained 58% of the territory that they lost in Kursk. The support of North Korea has now meant South Korea is considering becoming more involved in supporting Ukraine. It's also led to the US and its allies supporting ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles in Russia. So this thread is connected to all of the Europe and United States who are pumping weapons into Ukraine to the tune of around $380 billion. Thousands of fighters have volunteered from Western nations to fight on Ukraine's behalf. To me, the trend I think is plain to see that the conflict is spreading. Ukrainian special forces this year went abroad and began operating in Sudan and Syria against Russian assets. This thread also extends to Iran, North Korea, and China, who are sending various levels of support to Russia. North Korea sent 5 million artillery shells, armored vehicles, and soldiers. Iran sent thousands of explosive kamikaze drones, and China sent high-resolution...
Yeah, this is what I was saying at the start, like the Axis is creating China, Iran, Russia with the, that and like North Korea also, and yeah, Ukraine and European countries and US. An Axis is being created right now. This is a fucked up thing. If you analyze World War slowly, like don't just like see in like whole, like retrospect, but like at the start of the war, you'll realize like how country was like, there were some wars, small wars happening, then other countries were kind of helping, reluctant, then eventually helping, the war spreading. The more war drags on, the more there's a chance the war will spread, which is happening, right? North Korean troops entered the war. There you go. Europeans are not going to enter the war, one form or another, maybe in the name of militias or mercenaries, maybe not officially, but then eventually officially. By the way, now they're doing war at other places, some Africa places or something, right? Some other conflict, some other, like we see Myanmar conflict or like Syrian conflict. Yeah, Ukraine, Russia having their agenda there as well. Before you know it, it is becoming a global war. This is how slow global war starts. And the fucked up thing about World War III is that I've always assumed World War III might not be as fast-paced as you would think. Maybe it's insanely slow-paced because the reason Cold War was like cold, because we have nuke. If you want to amplify Cold War, it's a war that looks cold but slowly amplifies, right? Because it's not going to be immediate war, like immediate tank rolling to every country. People have nukes. So people cleverly will wage wars slowly. It will take years. Before you know it, by the way, every country is at war. This is World War III, right? And it will just amplify from there. Maybe because of nukes, it will never amplify at a level that will feel like World War II. But it's still war and people are fucked up, right? Slow, steady decay is the worst thing you can think of. Which is my fear, basically, for all this shit.
Observation satellite imagery, and specialized machine tools for weapons manufacturing. The conflict is still the largest and widest-reaching war to date. Each side is likely suffering around 1,500 casualties per day along the front, which is a reality I witnessed firsthand when I saw and visited aid stations inside Ukraine. I saw the amount of Russian troops who are getting bombed each night with drones. I had always imagined that maybe the numbers were inflated or exaggerated here, but I can confirm that the scale is awful. There were not a lot of territory exchanges in 2024, but the largest land grabs were made by Russian troops who have slowly advanced across the Donbass using infiltration teams of 2 to 3 men that take advantage of vast expanse of territory across the front. This chart shows the trend of Russian forces slowly gaining traction in territory over the past year. We can clearly see Ukraine is on the back foot, but not giving up yet. A major highlight to catch you up.
Yeah, see, that's... Okay, I'm going to give you an example of a business. If a business doesn't do well in a quarter, next quarter they're going to do something drastic in order to make up for it. That's how interests work, whether it's like a business or military warfare. 2024 was slow. So both sides will try to make sure that 2025 is not slow, which means something intense might happen this year. That's the fucked up part.
On this year was Western F-16 fighter jets arrived in Ukraine, and they've been in combat operations since then. Ukraine has struggled with a shortage in manpower, and I would say that that's maybe their main problem. Former Ukrainian officer Tataragami on X outlined how severe the lack of recruiting has led to battlefield losses, which have increased the number of desertions in the ranks of Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Russian financial markets may be running into difficulties with their currency as it's taken a sharp dive in 2024, so their industrial base continues to churn out 250,000 munitions per month, according to senior NATO officials. That's enough to keep the Russian artillery advantage in the field, while Ukraine has to wait for a steady trickle of ammo to arrive from their Western backers. And with a new president entering the White House in January, no one really knows what the US role will be in 2025. But I think one of the most important global conflicts right now is between China and the United States. I do a lot of videos that are critical of the CCP, but I think people miss that I also do a lot of videos pointing out the errors of the United States as well. So unfortunately, in 2024, there's been
Yeah, China-US conflicts are not really happening right now, but it's like looking like it might happen. Nothing has happened yet. If I were to see window of opportunity for China, it would be somewhat around now, since wars are spewing up around the world. US and like Europe is like focused on Ukraine and supplying them. Middle East also an issue. US might be focused on that. If like Iran and like becomes like a major partner in the war, US have to think about that. And if this is the time where if China try to attack Taiwan, US might not be at full disposal, where they can just focus completely at China, right? So that's the fucked up thing. So if China-US thing might happen, it might happen very soon, like in a couple years or something. But if it doesn't, maybe things will be fine. This is the thing, like China is the second biggest country on the planet, economically and everything wise. Why would they try to fuck that up? Trying to fight the number one country, where especially like graphs are slowly showing that China one day might even overtake US for economy. So why would they try to, maybe right now they don't want to look like weak, so they're not saying like, oh, we might not attack Taiwan, so they have to say, oh, by the way, our ideology says we have to take back Taiwan or something, but they don't really want to because things are going fine, so they just delay it, I guess. I think that's what might happen, right? So either we'll see war in like couple years or like never, right? So this China-US thing, I don't know, but yeah, both sides are amping up. You know what, I have to go right now. Yeah, but I'll do the second part next time. But yeah, the rise of war, this is insane. I don't know, like, I'm hoping this is like COVID type thing. In COVID, everybody was afraid. Second wave came, everybody was afraid. The new variant came in February or something. Everybody's like, oh, this is never gonna end. Then it ended, slowly disappeared, and everybody's fine. Everything's fine now. Like COVID, you don't hear about it, right? There's no cases. If there is cases like just influenza, nobody like think about it, right? So maybe this wars will become like that. Slowly it will become less intense. Some agreements will happen, some peace talk will happen, some ceasefire will happen temporarily becomes permanent. There you go, war stops or some shit. I don't know. I'm hoping that's what will happen. In a cartel thing, I don't even know. Like, I guess I'll have to watch more task and purpose updates on that, because cartel wars are amplifying. Like, damn, I haven't seen that in decades. So I don't know, like with the Trump, how that's gonna end up, who knows. Alright, well, if you like my next video, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.